Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel V. Hill, presented by Superbook Sports. Taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
Hey, welcome into Coffee Break. Obviously, not Rachel V. Hill. It's Jake Shapiro filling in for Rachel, who's on an always well-deserved vacation. She does so much work, and she's great on this show, as we all know and love. We're going to take it in a little bit different direction today, since it's Jake and not Rachel on the show, which means I've got a lot of basketball stuff to catch you up on, and CU stuff, and just stuff from around the Denver sports world, maybe from a different perspective than what we normally get on this show. But where I want to start with is football, because the Broncos did get some decently significant news today, given their next two games are at home against the Vikings, who are really hot, and the Josh Dobbs quarterback team. It's going to be just this incredible story that Sunday Night Football is going to play the heck out of, right? 5 different teams in just a couple different months here. One of those teams might be regretting letting Josh Dobbs go, and that is the Cleveland Browns, who cut him right after the end of training camp. The right end of the preseason, maybe going into the season. And that's because Deshaun Watson, their starting quarterback, who obviously has had many off the field issues, is getting season-ending wrist surgery today, or in the next couple days, and will not play in that next Broncos game after the Vikings game, which is against the Browns here in 2 weeks. So the Broncos are going to catch a break because the Broncos are going to catch a break because the Browns, I think, are 5-1 when Watson quarterbacks them this year, and they have proven to be one of the strongest defenses in the NFL. So Broncos are going to catch a break, and again, they're hot. So we're looking at this Broncos team who, again, they're playing really good football, right? We all know they're playing really good football here all of a sudden. Maybe it's lucky. Maybe it's just great football. We can debate it all we want. But if they win this week, they're back to 500. If they win next week, look out. And these are breaks they're getting all of a sudden. Yeah, it's not going to be easy to beat the Browns, even with Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA, a rookie quarterback. But that's significant injury news for the Denver Broncos. Okay, so last night, the Denver Nuggets played a Los Angeles Clippers team who is a Frankenstein of NBA past amazing players and amazing teams, right? They just mismatched a bunch of pieces together between James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard. They have 4 future Hall of Famers. 4. The Nuggets have 1 player on their roster who has been to an all-star game. Just a reminder, that guy is Nikola Jokic, of course. And Nikola clutches up down the stretch with Reggie Jackson, former Clippers guard, doing the duet thing that Jamal Murray normally does. And Denver takes down Los Angeles for the 13th time in their last 15 matchups, going back to going down 3-1 in the bubble. Denver has owned the Clippers. And this is a Clippers team that since that point in time has been talked about as a team, right, that can be one of the tops in the NBA, right? That just is going to be an NBA Finals contender. Their ceiling is the roof, like one of those teams, right? And they've just never gotten there. And we've heard matriculate out over the last few days that a guy like Lou Williams said the Nuggets, that's not why they lost 3-1 in the bubble. No, they quit. We decided to quit because we knew the bubble wasn't going to mean anything to anyone. That's just total bull junk, as Deion Sanders would say. But that's where the Nuggets and Clippers have been. It's just been the Nuggets completely pounding on the Clippers for the last few years. And last night was the first Nuggets game against James Harden's version of the Clippers. And now they're 0-5. And I look around the NBA landscape and I'm trying to figure out who's going to beat the Nuggets. I think Boston might have a chance. And that's kind of it. Milwaukee has started off the season awful. I think they just completely messed up their coach hiring. I think obviously adding Lillard to Antetokounmpo, you can see what they're trying to do. It's going to take a while, and we're 10 games into the season, so I'm not going to judge them yet. The Suns haven't had a game yet, I think, with Beal, Booker, and Durant. So it's hard to judge them just yet. But man, do they look bad. The Lakers look bad. Their size should be better against the Nuggets this year around than last year. The team in the West, very surprisingly, that might have a best chance against the Nuggets is the team that they absolutely just pounded in the playoffs last year, and that's Minnesota. Minnesota looks great. They got into a little brawl last night with the Warriors. It was awesome from an entertainment standpoint. Rudy Gobert in a chokehold from Draymond Green. But what should be thought of in that story is the Warriors punted that game. Steph Curry sat out. Draymond got ejected right away. So did Clay. And the Warriors knew they probably weren't going into Minnesota and winning that game. The length on that team, the coaching on that team, and of course, Tim Conley constructing that team should put together a better fight against Denver if the two match up this year. Anthony Edwards is better. They have a better player to guard Jamal Murray and Jaden McDaniels, who just missed the playoffs last year because he punched a wall right before the playoffs. That's what happened. And Mike Conley is playing some of the best basketball of his career somehow at this age. And Rudy and Kat have kind of figured out their chemistry stuff. So I just wanted to look around the league a little bit as I welcome in one of my really good friends, Troy Finnegan, who's from CU Sports Nation and Rivals. Troy's a massive basketball guy. And we'll just kind of finish up the Nuggets point with Troy. Troy, I know you've watched the Nuggets as much as anyone. They have the best record in the NBA right now to start the season. All the question marks we had going into the season, I don't want to say all of them have been answered because the bench is kind of a work in progress. It's like the bullpen in baseball. You can always get better there, right? Yeah. But the Bruce Brown question seems to have been answered as Reggie Jackson still has the juice.
Yeah, first of all, hi, Jake. Thanks for having me on. I liked the Jalen Pickett minutes with the bench last night too. I thought that gave him a different look. But you're right, Reggie Jackson still has the juice. He's made some huge plays off the bench and filling in for Jamal Murray in the starting lineup. You'd like to see some more consistency from Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, but those are still young guys. They're kind of growing into their roles, especially Peyton Watson didn't play a ton last year. Zeke Naji's still kind of getting his feet under him. So I think that unit will get better. You look at Christian Brown even last year, he started the season not in the rotation, and you look at how he was playing by the end of the year in the playoffs, big contributor off the bench there. So I think that unit will get better, but you're right. And any time that they're picking up wins without Jamal Murray, it's a good thing. Great point on Minnesota also.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated at what this next step is for the Nuggets because they've got a 6-game road trip or a 5-game road trip in 9 nights. Either way, they're out on the road until the Sunday after Thanksgiving here. And they hit a lot of towns over the Midwest. They kind of go back and forth. The Nuggets, I wouldn't say haven't been tested so far because they've played the Lakers. They've had some good matchups, but this is kind of the earliest real test they're going to get. They're going to get a tough little road trip here. If they can come back on this thing 500 or find a way to be above 500 on the road, which Michael Malone has kind of made an internal goal for, the Nuggets are going to be in an amazing position here rolling into Christmas if they find themselves at, let's just say, 13-5.
Absolutely. And the tough part about the West is there's no easy wins this year. Even the teams that you maybe thought were easy wins, like we just got a taste of it with the Houston Rockets, who are on fire right now. I know they're on the upcoming road trip. So, but you're right. They're undefeated at home. Minnesota's also undefeated at home, so that's going to be an interesting race to watch for that 1 seed this year. But you're right. 500 on the road, just like Michael Malone says. We know that they're going to dominate at home as long as they're healthy. But you're right. 500 on that road trip would be great.
All right, I'm going to shift gears to what you cover day in, day out. I know you're just a huge hoops head, but let's talk about Deion Sanders because some interesting stuff has happened here in the last couple days, which I think I was on the forefront of this. Literally the second Deion was hired, I think I texted you. I'm like, The only way he leaves within a year is if the A&M job opens.
Yeah.
The A&M job is opened, but within that time frame, the NCAA has also gotten a lot stricter with their transfer rules, which would obviously affect Shadur and Travis, who are both NFL draft eligible towards the end of next year.
Mhm.
So where are we at with Deion Sanders, who you can't say has done anything less than an A+ job in Boulder thus far?
100%. People the last couple weeks he's kind of gotten a lot of heat for some game management stuff. They're on this losing streak, but that doesn't outweigh what he's done in the bigger picture in year one. I would be really surprised if he left. And he kind of gave an interesting answer yesterday when asked about it. He kind of dodged it at first and said, I need to focus on this week. We're trying to win a game. And then later on, he said the thing that I'm sure a lot of you have seen where he said, I'm here and my kids are here. I pay taxes here. My dog is here. I get mail here. So that was interesting, but you're right. You mentioned the transfer rules. I'd be really surprised if he bolted, because Shadur and Travis would likely have to sit out next year. And would they be willing to, one, either stay at CU and play for a new coach and a new system, or two, would they be willing to put off the NFL for an extra year to sit out a year so that they could play 2025 at A&M? I also think that the Buffs are moving into the Big 12 next year, which is going to be a lot lighter of a schedule than the Pac-12 is this year. That's going to be a pretty, I don't want to say winnable, but it's not, certainly not going to be the gauntlet that the Pac-12 is this year. So I think that the outlook for the Buffs next year will be enough to keep Deion around for at least one more season.
Yeah, I never saw a path to 6 wins this year, even when they started out as hot as they did.
Agreed.
Even assuming not an amazing progress and an amazing offseason, I can pretty easily see a path to 8 wins next year, or 7, 8 wins, which is fantastic. But maybe this job for Deion came open a year too early, which would benefit the Buffs. But at the same time, even though Deion Sanders has been highly successful, he's made plenty of money in his career and obviously has no problem just signing another marketing deal and getting money left or right whenever he needs it. A&M just paid $76 million for a coach to go away.
Yep.
The amount of money that they could pay Deion, if that's who they wanted, might be an amount that Deion does not have the ability to say no to. There's a certain threshold of money that no one is able to say no to. And I just wonder with that job if it rises to that level. And the other school to watch in this situation is the one who poached CU's last head coach, Mel Tucker in Michigan State, who had that falling out because of a lot of different reasons that are not fun to get into. But those are two schools with a lot of money. And another one, if not this year, will come around knocking next year. I wonder why, or if there was ever an offer on the table from Rick George to Deion after week 1, after week 2, because I know people were nudging him. People with a lot of voice and a lot of pull, I'll say, in the CU athletics department to maybe talk about giving Deion a contract extension just a week or two in, because Deion has more than paid for his contract already with the marketing money coming into CU.
Absolutely. And I would be interested to see if they would visit that this offseason. Another thing about A&M and Michigan State is that, especially next year with the way the realignment is going, the Big Ten and the SEC are going to be the pinnacle of college football. I don't want to say the other Power 5 conferences are going to get left behind, but there's going to be a bigger gap next year in college football between the Big Ten and the SEC and everyone else. So you wonder if that's in Deion's mind to kind of get to that level. But you're right. Deion was also asked yesterday about being wanted by these schools, and he kind of generalized that answer as well. He said everything in life is a blessing or something like that. But you're right. I'm curious to see how CU kind of goes about it from the standpoint of trying to keep him around, not just for Shadur and Travis next year, but obviously beyond that, because they're trying to build something in the long term.
is there any way Colorado can sneak into a bowl game here with a 4-6 record right now, 2 games left, Pullman and Salt Lake City? I think it's key to note that there are teams that find a way into bowl games with 5-7 record and a waiver. And Colorado's been one of the most viewed teams in the country. So that would kind of nudge a bowl maybe in the direction of wanting to pick them up. And obviously ESPN's been very kind to the Colorado Buffaloes this year. So basically I'm saying, can Colorado win one more game, 2 tough road games? And can they maybe get a waiver to find a way into the Gasparilla, Bad Boy Mowers Bowl or whatever?
The LA Bowl by Gronk. I wouldn't be surprised to see them pick up the 5th win. Both wins is a stretch for me because of the way that Utah's been playing recently. That's a really tough place to go play. Their offense has kind of been clicking with Barnes at quarterback after. I think it helped them too when they announced that Rising was going to miss the year for good. I feel like they were kind of struggling a little bit with.
I think they changed their offense. They finally committed to changing the offense.
Yeah. Because it was kind of like week to week. Oh, he might come back this week. He might come back next week. So once they finally pulled the plug, they've been playing a lot better. Washington State is reeling, though. Worse than the Buffs. If you want to see points scored Friday night, 8:30 p.m., CU and Washington State. Washington State's given up a ton of points. They have a dynamic quarterback. Sounds a lot like CU. They just gave up 42 points to Cal in a loss. I believe it was their 6th in a row. But it's going to be 2 desperate teams. Both are 4-6. Both obviously need a win. Pullman has been a house of horrors for CU. I think the last 3 meetings, they're outscored 96-13.
And I don't think any of those games have been dry. This one will finally be dry.
Yeah, which is good. That'll help the passing game out. But yeah, obviously a new team, new regime. Washington State, that this is when you want to get them right now. So I think that CU's defense, statistically, it hasn't totally shown up, but their defense is playing a little bit better the last couple weeks, albeit against a lighter schedule of offenses. It's easier to play better when you're not playing USC and Oregon. But I think that group has been better. They should be able to run the ball if they're willing to run the ball. They should be able to run the ball a little bit better this week. I think that this could be a big breakout for the offense on Friday night.
So Colorado, obviously, a couple weeks ago, made a giant change in adding Pat Shurmur to elevating Pat Shurmur into co-offensive coordinator role. I've written and crushed Deion for that. You mentioned the in-game management stuff. I've written and crushed Deion for that. And yet I'm still willing to give him an AA plus so far for the job. Just focusing on the first part of that. If Deion has a great recruiting class, and you would know better than me, so you can talk to the recruiting class, but we're about a month from signing day. If Deion can pull together a great recruiting class, the schedule is lighter. Do you really have faith that this football team is going to be in college football playoff contention next year, given what we've seen in terms of the coaching issues from Deion Sanders and some of the people around the CU staff?
I have faith that they can be in the mix. Yes. I'm not. And this is contingent on next year the playoff moves to 12 teams, which is that's another big thing for CU. It's
which it's supposed to be, but because of the realignment, it might get pushed back a year.
Yeah. If it is, then CU should be in the mix for a top 12 spot. You look at the Big 12 next year. Arizona's moving over. They're going to be very good. Jed Fish doing a great job. Their quarterback, Noah Fafita, will be back. McMillan, their number 1 wide receiver, he will be back. They're going to be good. Utah will have Cam Rising back next year, assuming he stays there, which I think he will. They will be very good. But the rest of the teams in that Big 12 next year are not, talent-wise, most of them are not going to be able to stack up to CU. We know that with Deion, you said he does an AA+ job no matter what this year, and that's because more than half the battle is acquiring talent in college football, especially with the transfer portal. We know Deion is going to recruit out of high school. We know he's going to recruit out of the transfer portal. He's going to replenish, especially at the skill positions. They have to get better up front, especially Utah is going to be very telling in a couple weeks, I feel like, about where CU is up front. But year 2, I think they'll get some guys back. You'll get some new transfers. Maybe you'll get some homegrown talent in there. They should be, if they can scrap together an average to even slightly below average unit on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, I do think that 9 or 10 wins in next year's Big 12 is definitely in play, and that puts you in the mix for a top 12 spot.
Yeah, I don't think their offensive line and defensive lines are going to go from just bottom basement, some of the worst in the country, some of the worst I've ever seen, honestly, to great. But I do think that they can go from that bad to kind of where the Buffs are this year, right? Like the team as a whole has gone from horrible to, all right, they're scrappy, they're okay. You can find a way. And I think that's where the line play can get to. And if any of the Power 5 conferences you could survive with poor line play, it's been the Big 12 historically because of the spread offenses, because of the fact that the games are 65-60 instead of, the Big 10 where it's 10-3 and you're fighting for yards, right? You're fighting for the goal line and time on the clock, more or less. Oklahoma State's always going to be scrappy with Mike Gundy there. Leopold at Kansas has done a fantastic job. Kansas State's been, I think, a great program for a very long time that,
Definitely.
at one point in my life, I would have just taken CU being there rather than, some of the aspirations because it's been so rough for CU for so long. So I look around the Big 12 and I say, yeah, there's some really good teams, but they're losing their 2 best programs in Oklahoma and Texas this winter. So I think there's some legitimate room for Colorado, obviously, in the Big 12 as we are talking about it. But the biggest day for Colorado in the next couple weeks is not at Pullman, is not at Salt Lake City, but it is that signing day in the middle of next month and what Deion actually gets. Because if he can find a way to get 1 or 2 freshmen who are going to be impact players and play right away next year, in addition to the freshmen that are already on campus right now, that's going to be a huge benefit. And then obviously what's done in the portal. Speaking of the portal, we have which I don't think anyone's covered CU women's basketball as closely as you have over the last year or two. J.R. Payne has killed it in the portal. J.R. Payne did a fantastic job assembling this team, right? And I wanted to do a little bit more of a deeper dive than just, they're the 5 team in the country. Congrats. 1, where is this program at? How did they get there? 2, 3, are they actually the 5th best team in the country? Because I look at the roster, I'm like, this is fantastic. They're a really good team, but like, are they really UConn, Tennessee, like that level, or where are we at?
So I was surprised that they got moved up that high. I thought that they on Monday when the rankings came out, I thought that they would be in the 10 to 12 range, but a win over the number 1 team in the country who came into the year with as much hype as LSU does, that does a lot for you. Their roster is excellent. It's a great mix of really good veterans that have been there for a long time. They've played together. They have a ton of continuity. And then J.R. Payne made 2 really great adds in the transfer portal that fill 2 needs for them in Maddie Nolan, who's another shooter, which they really needed, transfer from Michigan. They really only had 1 knockdown shooter on the roster in Frida Foreman, who exploded onto the scene against LSU. And then she also added Sarah Rose Smith from Missouri, who is a bigger wing. She can really rebound. She's really versatile, can guard both inside and out. And you saw it on Sunday against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is a really small team. They shoot a ton of threes, and they couldn't miss a shot on Sunday. And CU was really struggling offensively. And J.R. Payne, to her credit, she went small to close the game out. She took Aaronette Vonleh off the floor. She played Quay Miller at the 5 with Sarah Rose Smith, Kendall Wetta, Jalen Sherrod, and Frida Foreman. And they, in the 4th quarter, they dominated Oklahoma State. They dominated with cutting and passing and ball movement offensively. They cut off the 3-point line because taking Vonleh off the floor, they couldn't put her in action anymore to create those open looks. So they have a lot, and we'll get to this. It's kind of a similar thing with the men's team too, but they can be so many different things. They can play big lineups. They can play small lineups. They can play shooting lineups. They can play lineups that are great on defense. There's a lot of different styles of opponents that they can match up with. So The one thing that I think they're arguably missing is somebody in the half court at the end of a game where who's going to go get a bucket. That might be the one place where they struggle against, especially in a Pac-12 that's going to be really, really good. But J.R. Payne's done an awesome job with the roster, and I think that they're deserving of their ranking right now. They've played great.
Yeah, I think Jalen Sherrod is the candidate to maybe grow into that half court person.
Definitely.
She's just an absolute bulldog, like an amazing player to watch play. And I say this as like a basketball fan. Like, if you love basketball, you have to watch Jalen Sherrod and the CU women's basketball team play. It's fun to watch. They went to the Sweet 16 last year, lose to that awesome Iowa team led by Caitlin Clark, come back this year, add the transfers, like you said, beat LSU, beat Oklahoma State. They've got NC State and Kentucky on the schedule, which for those who don't follow women's basketball closely, those are good programs, not great programs. They're not ranked, but they are power conference programs, and they're good. But Colorado's schedule doesn't really pick up until the Pac-12 begins. And the Pac-12, as of last night when I did this research, so it might have changed if someone lost last night, Pac-12 has not lost a single non-conference game so far, the women's basketball programs. And they're going to start off their Pac-12 play with Utah, who is a fantastic team. And that is going to be that's going to be one of the best basketball games played in 2024 in the state of Colorado.
Yeah, the Pac-12 is going to be an absolute bloodbath. You mentioned Utah. They got upset on the road against Baylor last night. Tough place to go against a ranked team. But Utah has their two best players, Alyssa Pilley inside and Grace Neepkins, their point guard. Were both awesome for them last year. They were a 2 seed, an Elite 8 team last year. So they've got the two best players back from that. UCLA is the highest ranked Pac-12 team right now, and their starting 5 is awesome. They've got Kiki Rice back and Charisma Osborne, who was one of the best players in the country last year. Their backcourt is going to be fantastic. They've got Gabby Jaquez, who has really taken a leap, little sister of Jaime Jaquez. Buff fans, if you thought you were rid of the Jaquez family, not yet, because Gabby Jaquez is playing some really good ball. And then Lauren Betts, a transfer from Stanford in the middle, is going to be really good for UCLA as well. Stanford's going to be really good, as they always are, under Tara Vanderveer, with Cameron Brink and Hannah Jump back and another big recruiting class. And then
and like a quarter of their teams from the state of Colorado.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you've watched any USC yet, but Juju Watkins is one of the highest regarded recruits in women's college basketball history. And she has eclipsed 30 points in 2 of their first 3 games. She's balling. Washington State's ranked. They're going to be really good. The defending conference champs. They've got Charlize Ledger-Walker back at guard. So the Pac-12, it's going to be they have 4 of the top 6 ranked teams right now. Yeah. And 5 in the top 10. It's going to be a war in that conference.
It's interesting that you mentioned USC, because I was down talking to them yesterday because they lost in men's basketball. They got upset UC Irvine, and Pilley's played amazing, and she was at USC and transferred out. So I was down talking USC a little bit, but you mentioned it with the women's team, and this is my takeaway. I was at the CU men's game last night, is how versatile those teams can be. And the men's team, the ceiling is unbelievable on this team. And you mentioned the women's team being a top 5 team and probably being deserving of being legitimately a top 5 team. The men's team's top 25. They're gonna get probably to the Sweet 16 at least. This is I've seen a basketball team in Boulder 3 times this good. Once was Spencer Dinwiddie's last year before he tore his ACL, where Colorado goes to number 11 in the rankings. They look like they're going to be fantastic, and then everything goes to hell. The other one was McKinley Wright, who led that team to the second round and further into the NCAA tournament with that fantastic team. This team looks just as good. Cody Williams is the top recruit in the country, and he looks that good. Like, this men's team is fantastic.
He was awesome last night. He did so many great things. Everyone, there was the dunk was the big thing that was circulating on Twitter, or on X, but that was like the 5th or 6th most impressive thing that he did. He had a pass from up near the logo down to, I think it was O'Brien, down in the dunker spot, where he kind of looked away at defender at the free throw line. That set up an easy basket. He had a couple of really nice touch finishes at the rim through contact. He knocked down a 3. And, when I talking to the players and Tad Boyle before the season, the thing that stuck out about him the most, all of them unanimously agreed it was his IQ and how unselfish of a player he was. He was always going to make the right play. And I think in a game like last night, that really shined through. His first game, he was a little tentative, first game in college basketball. He's trying to get acclimated to the system, missed the second game with an injury. But I think last night, I put this in our message board during the game. I said, you guys better enjoy this year, because if he's doing stuff like he was last night, he's going to be out of there.
Yeah, I don't expect Cody Williams to be in the NBA draft this year, but if he continues to play like he did last night, he's going to be a top 10 pick. And be first Colorado top 10 pick, I think, since Chauncey. Anyway, we are running out of time. He's Troy Finnegan. You can follow all of his work at C Sports Nation and the Rivals Network covering the University of Colorado. One of my favorite follows in the CU community because he appreciates basketball as much as I do. And again, if there was ever a time to appreciate the basketball programs in Boulder, it's now. I've been waiting 15 years for this moment. It's fantastic, and I'm excited. Troy, thanks for joining us today.
They're great. Going to be a fun next couple months. Thanks for having me on, Jake.
All right. We are back on Coffee Break tomorrow with a new cast of characters, filling in for Rachel all the rest of the week. And we will catch up with you tomorrow at 10:30. Have a great day. Hope you enjoyed your coffee break.